Hello, good people, and welcome to the Higher Living Podcast. This is episode 14 already. And on today's show, we have someone who's actually a blast from the past in my world. Someone that I worked with 15 years ago. And at that point, 15 years ago, this young, inspirational lady was conquering the corporate world, and she was a pioneer at that point in terms of helping organizations upskill and train their people in the latest and greatest tools and techniques to really drive organizational performance and improve organizational performance. Deirdre Jensen and I haven't been in touch for quite a number of years, over a decade, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have her in studio and having her share the next hour or so with me and with all of you, sharing her story of how she's now become the managing creative partner at an organization called Game2change, which is a really disruptive process and business that looks at just changing the way people think about learning and embracing gaming and many other methodologies into the way we help organizations to improve their performance. Because the bottom line is that education is one of the most powerful instruments in terms of not only in the corporate world, but in terms of every government, reducing poverty, inequality, and just really growing economy. So I'm not going to steal any more of Deirdre's thunder as I normally do with some of these intros. How are you doing, Deirdre? Welcome to the Higher Living Podcast.
Hi, Sean. Thank you so much for inviting me and that really lovely introduction. I feel like I've got to step into some big shoes during this podcast. But yes, it's great to be chatting to you and connecting again after all this time. When you said 15 years, I was like, wow, doesn't feel like that. So thank you.
Yeah. And I remember it so clearly back in those days. I was the young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed guy that was, there to conquer the world, and being exposed to people like yourself at the time that was so seasoned in the industry and so seasoned in the L&D space and the digital learning space. It was quite daunting for me at the time.
Yes.
So I'm so interested in hearing about your journey and how you've also an entrepreneur and a business owner. So it's really, really interesting. So before we get into that, let's give everyone a bit of a context of your background. Who is Deirdre Jensen? Where does she come from? And let's take it from there.
Okay, great. Well, Sean, just to give you a background of myself, and I'll start with I actually straight after school I decided I want to be an accountant, and that was all the good advice that was given to me by my parents and everyone around me. And in my second year of accounts, I realized my brain operated slightly differently to other accounting students, and I was working backwards on my cash flow. And immediately I knew this is not the path for me to follow. So it was very hard. I had to make a decision, and I converted at the time. It was studying a Bachelor of Commerce, and I decided I'm going to go and focus on economics and make that my major. And obviously I finished my Bachelor of Commerce. I went into a training organization. So I always see myself as not my life, and all the patterns I see in my life is I've never been mainstream, and I've always had to try something else out to actually discover what's my real talent, what's my real gifts to this world. So my journey has been a really winding road, and I think there's that great little that meme where you see a straight line, how I plan my life and how it goes, and then you see a whole lot of squiggled lines. Well, I can definitely say that's been my life. It's definitely not been a straight line. And so I ended up getting involved in training. I then went into an NGO with education, which was the furthest thing that a would-be accountant would have considered. But I loved the whole idea of being able to empower and take people up from where they were. My mom was a teacher, so I think that's something that runs through my blood. And then I ended up studying further. So I did a postgraduate in education. And I just knew that unlocking people's potential was just something that was my path. But, paths are never straight lines. And when I met you, I was involved in corporate training with a consultancy. And I learned so much in that experience of doing so many different things. And I think this is what's great when you are in these environments. You get exposure to so many different areas and people. And I think we had started with digital learning in those days. I mean, I'm really giving my age away. We actually had CDs, and we had to make sure the clients had CD players on their desktops. So that's how it all started. And it's just grown organically from there. And I went into 2009. I had a big personal awakening. I realized that I'd lost myself in this corporate path, and in my partnership, I'd lost myself. And I took a year off. And in that year, I did some very drastic things. I left the corporate world. I left my marriage. I took that year to really get to know myself, to do a lot of personal development work. And I traveled. I did some great things and experiences. And I came back, and I then thought, now what? I had this blank canvas, but it was a little bit overwhelming. So I really started to plot out the life that I wanted to live. And that was with independent consulting. And I really enjoyed that. And that was my starting point. And I was consulting to a couple of banking clients at the time. And then my whole love with gaming and loving playing board games was actually ignited one day. I was sitting in a training session, and these people were falling asleep in front of me, and I realized this is not the way to learn, and it's not a great way of me feeling valued. So I decided to bring a game into that session the next day, and all of a sudden everyone developed a personality, everyone was engaging. And it triggered something in me to say that how we're learning needs to change. How we're engaging needs to change. And that's when I started to experiment with bringing gaming and learning together in a very simple format. And I did, with one of my consulting clients, we did an induction board game. And that's where Game2change actually was catalyzed in that project. And a year later, after we'd rolled that out and done a whole lot of other things, I decided I wanted to really start this business. It was myself initially. And I wanted to really push forward in terms of what we could do with learning and what we could do with gaming and technology. And it's been quite a journey. I mean, there's many hats that I've worn. I think for me personally, it stretched me in ways I could never have imagined. Both in running a business, I realized how much I had to learn, how much I still am learning. And then also in taking, something new and pioneering and something that's creative and make it sustainable, both as a business, but also make it something of value to your clients. So, Game2change has been going for 7 years. Initially, it was just me. And then in 2018, people started to join our organization. And now we have 7, and we've got a host of associates. And I can only say that the last 2 years have been the most stimulating, challenging, stressful, but I really feel I'm on my path. And I'm very excited about what technology and what the whole new trend in the workplace is going to bring to learning, and also what do they call them, Generation Z. I absolutely love the energy and the ideas and how young people entering the workplace is really re-looking at how we do things. So Sean, that's in a nutshell. I don't know how much of a nutshell that was, but that's me up until this point.
Wow. Okay. I actually, there's just too many places to start. To be honest, I'm not sure where to start, but let's take it from the top. It's so interesting, Deirdre. Almost every single person, if not every single person that I've had on this show, has had a similar beginning where they've started a tertiary a qualification of some kind. They've had an idea of what they wanted to do. That has changed. They then qualified and they then started working. And often the point that they're at now is completely different to the point that they started. And I can share that for
Exactly.
myself as well, is completely different. So if there are any young people out there that are listening that are unsure of whether what they're doing is right or wrong, or the degree is right or wrong, don't stress, just go with it. Life has a
Totally.
way of taking you down a road and teaching you all the requisite skills that you need to one day get to the place that you actually need to be.
Exactly. And I think it's we get very, I think our society has very much been conditioned around success and this is my path. And obviously you do need to have ambitions and goals. Though I think sometimes it's good to be a little bit lost because it allows you to reflect. It allows you to introspect on what you want. And often those periods of rediscovering yourself, you really get to the core of what makes you come alive and what is your sort of superpower that you bring into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And your story around the year you took off, the finding yourself here, if I can put it that way, it fascinates me because I think there's a lot of people that are in not only the corporate world but in many industries that are completely and utterly burnt out, emotionally, mentally, and now with people going back to the office physically, people are actually just burnt out. But they
Yes.
don't have the luxury of stopping because it's not only work you have to worry about, it's home, it's kids, it's money, it's so many different things. Life has become so complex. Is that
Yes.
sort of what was happening to you in that space? So the real question I'm trying to get out here is, how did you, I mean, it was such a big decision for you to make. I can only imagine leaving your job, leaving everything,
Yes.
leaving the stability, and then taking this year to rediscover. It meant that there was a turning point somewhere there.
No, definitely, and it's amazing, that experience with burnout. It was awful, and I really empathize with people going through it. But it was also one of the biggest gifts. I didn't realize it at the time, and it was very scary. I mean, I had to move into a little flat. I wasn't sure I had enough money to sustain me, but I didn't know what was going to happen after that. I had an idea I wanted to be a coach, but I wasn't sure how that was going to pan out. So I really had to be quite courageous and learn to be courageous because I'd always wanted stability and certainty. And then on some level, I just couldn't handle the life that I was living, and I had to take that step. So, and obviously you've got to do it in context of your responsibilities and life. And I think sometimes what happens, and I've reflected a lot on this, and I've also had moments, in the business and throughout where I've also worked incredibly hard. And I think we almost feel, there's this it feels like a paradox to take time out when you're under such pressure. So you get into this habit of working harder and thinking if you work harder, it's going to solve your problems, when that's not necessarily the case. I think, if I had to give advice, is to create those spaces in your life to step out of what you know and to get a bigger perspective. And that bigger perspective, allows you just to see your problems, your challenges, with a lot better judgment, with those times of stepping out replenishes your soul. It gives you a perspective of life that when you're in the day-to-day, mundaneness, you can get lost in that. And even now I don't have the luxury of, I've got a team of people, I've got to make sure that my business runs, and it is very challenging, is that, finding that time to take a day off and go hiking somewhere, or doing something totally different, like going to an art gallery, really just invigorates me, and also makes me just take my lens off that very narrow view and see things in a bigger perspective, which I think really helps with that feeling of burnout.
Yeah. And, and I've also been through something very similar where, if people don't understand, I mean, people that haven't gone through it would battle to understand how severe burnout is. It's almost like a complete loss of identity, complete meaningless in this world.
Totally.
I've heard people even call it things like dark nights of the soul and all sorts of things. But it does, I could completely agree with you. It does give you a new perspective when you get out of it. It's just difficult to get out of it. But it's at times like that one needs to also look at whatever you find comfort in. I mean, if it's spirituality, if it's religion, if it's whatever it may be, there needs to be some sort of grounding, some sort of anchoring. Because when you hit ground zero and you on the floor, there's nowhere to go. And that's actually it's a good thing, because now there's nowhere to go. You have to stand up, but you have to stand up with the experience of what went wrong in the first place.
Yes.
And this is where I find that a lot of people are embracing this concept of spirituality, not from a religious perspective, but just from a day-to-day life perspective. The concept of having a purpose, waking up with a purpose, the concept of understanding and embracing mortality, the fact that, we are not going to be here anymore.
Exactly.
And you look at your life in context to those things, it does give you a completely different perspective.
Definitely. It's, and I think there's a big drive, and we've seen it post-COVID, and I guess it was also inching there before, and COVID really just like ramped it up because of all the dynamics. And it's about bringing humanity back. We went through sort of decades where it was all about consumption. It was all about how much could you get. It was this very, this culture of ambition and moving forward, and consuming as much as you could. And then what happens is you're driving yourself to such a limit that you actually do hit rock bottom, because that side of that humanity around your meaning, around connection, around community, around giving back, those are all fundamental parts of being human. So, and as you said, it's that taking that time out to find those parts of yourself, because the paradox is when you actually take time out, you actually give yourself more energy for those other areas of your life. Absolutely. So it's interesting what we're going through as a collective, and I think there's people out there who are focused on mental health, burnout, self-care, and it's interesting just some of the techniques and a more holistic approach to both work and living.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are looking at mindfulness techniques. A lot of people have embraced meditation, have embraced yoga, have embraced all sorts of breathing exercises, all sorts of, breathing techniques, should I say, all sorts of different things that work for them. I find that a lot of people that I speak to post-COVID, anxiety and depression seems to be very rife at the moment. A lot of people seem to be battling with these things. And there's all sorts of conspiracy theories around it. I personally believe that life is just so hectic at this point in time. I was actually abroad a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And when I landed in the country that I was in, I just felt completely and utterly at peace. Being away from everything that's in your ecosystem and now being out of that, like you say, it gives you that perspective. And the minute I landed, I started to feel this way again. And you start to feel the pressure. You start to feel the energy. And that's why I agree with you. It's so important to take the time out.
Definitely. And it can be little spurts, it doesn't have to be, like me, that I was very fortunate that I got that time out. But I think it can be within, it can be a day. It can be taking an afternoon out. And And just also saying like, actually, today I'm not being productive. I'm going to go and spend time with my kids, or I'm going to go for a walk in the park. And that gives you more energy the next day.
Yeah.
Um, and I will say it's easier said than done. I think we are quite conditioned around being useful, being productive. And I catch myself regularly, even after so many years of practicing certain things, and I think this was with COVID, it was just, we had massive change that no one had ever dealt with. And I think that change and almost a feeling of crisis really pulls people into, dark places. And those survival mechanisms kick in, and unfortunately that's all the bad behaviors that we regress to, and that's where we're being mindful is really important, so you can recognize it before you go down that spiral. And I think we've all been there, and I have regular moments where the pressure's intense and I just feel like I just want to work harder, I want to do more, and push myself harder, and I have to actually, like, there's a discipline. I have to stop myself from that. So those grooves over years and years become pretty established.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But I mean, that's also one of the reasons and one of the great things about being your own boss and being an entrepreneur is that you can allow yourself that freedom to take a day out, but you need to get over that point of feeling guilty about it. I don't know if you go through the same thing, but I feel
it's been my I had when I left corporate, and I had that space and time, I was very anxious at first because I wasn't needed. And I realized, okay, I'm here on my own.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, I had a period of time where I just had a lot of freedom, and I lived life to the fullest. And I did what I needed to do. And then I started Game2change, and it was great initially. And now as the momentum in the business builds up and it starts to really take off, then there's this pressure around, you want to do all of these things. And I have to remind myself, and this is a daily practice with me, because I've got so many ideas and I'm so passionate about what I'm doing, but I've also got to hone myself in to say, okay, slow down. Everything has its own time, its own pace. You need to also devote time to balancing your life out. And that is something I've got to remind myself every morning. That's the challenge of being your own boss. You've got 100% responsibility of your own life and your own work, but with it comes, if things don't go right, it all lands on you. And you've got to make the decisions, and you've got to be okay with those decisions, and you've got to be okay with uncertainty. And if you want to take a month off and you feel that's necessary, you've got to say, I'm going to do it. And regardless of what happens, I'm going to be okay with it. So it's been interesting, because it's been another level of self-discovery for me in terms of living a balanced life. Managing my passion and my wanting to bring this wanting to bring all these new techniques with looking after myself. So that's still something that I am balancing.
Yeah. But I must say, I mean, a deep congratulations for 7 years of running your business. I know from personal experience, it's hard to make 7 years. Most businesses don't make it through the first year.
Yes.
And then it gets incrementally harder, and then when you start bringing on staff, it gets incrementally harder.
Yes.
So congratulations on that. And
thank you, Sean.
So I mean, at the beginning we all started the same. It was you, yourself, and yourself.
Yes, me, myself, and myself. We sat in an office.
Yes, yeah, and that's it, eh? And you go and you have an info email address and your own info address, and then you're copying info, but it's actually you as well. You're just trying to be professional, You're trying to pull all of these moves. We've all done that, and it's such an amazing journey. And then you look back and it's like 7 years later. Would you have done it any differently? Before we get into the detail of your business, would you have done it any differently if you could go back 7 years?
Look, I mean, it's there's definitely some big lessons I learned, and I did pay some hard school fees. And I guess there's something to be said about being a little bit naive about what something entails, because if you really knew how tough it was, I suppose most people would not go down that road. So, um, and it's definitely been something that has really formed me as a person. I don't think I've had such a growth experience as running a business. And as you said, there's pros and cons to every stage of a business. And I always just thought, when I get to this level or this billing, then I'll be flying and I'll be just like cruising along and other people will be doing it for me. And then I got to that level and then there was, okay, there's all these people issues and I've got to worry about this and that. And there's more costs and there's more bigger clients, more complex projects. So it's definitely every level brings with its good things. That's now there's a momentum, there's a branding around my business, so I don't have to create from scratch like I did when I started. But there's also other things, other pressures that when I started I didn't have. So I don't know if there's anything that I would do differently. I mean, there's a couple of lessons I learned. There was lessons I learned about going from having a passion and being an individual contributor, and I underestimated the difference between that and building a business and the skills required. And I just thought because I loved what I did and I was really good at it and I could do smaller projects, that there would be a natural leveling up into the business. And actually running a business is very different. There's a whole skill set there that I almost like, for me, it was like starting my career from scratch, learning about business practices, and I'm still learning so much about it. It's probably something that you can spend your whole life, because business is, there's complexity, there's different types of businesses, there's different levels. I've actually found that to be the most, I've really enjoyed it, but I've really been challenged by it at the same time. So I think I would have gained more business, how to run a business and those business skills before going on this journey. I think it could have saved me quite a bit of money. It could have saved me time, and it could have saved me quite a bit of pain in that process. So I think that would be my advice to anyone who is a really good individual contributor and wants to take it to the next level is get those skills to equip yourself, because when you like experimenting along the way, it can become quite expensive when things don't work out.
Yeah, trial and error. Tell
Exactly.
me, did you have a business coach or somebody that you had guiding you, or someone that you had advising you along the way?
I did. I had a number of coaches, and I did a lot of courses. I also read a lot. I really started reading an incredible amount, and it's amazing when necessity drives something, you just like consume information and you're looking for it. So it's interesting. I've been part of also business groups and forums. I found that really valuable, because it's also a mindset of running a business. It's very different. You are a problem solver, so you've got to be in that problem solving mindset. And then also YouTube. I mean, it sounds quite a strange thing, but I found like listening to interviews with well-known business leaders and people in the area, there's such a wealth to hear that, and it's authentic because it's people sharing their experiences.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think a lot of people won't admit, that YouTube has actually become such a great tool to find information related to almost anything, which I think most people know, but most people won't admit. And I can freely admit it. Before a big presentation or before I've got a big meeting, I always go on to YouTube just to, get another perspective from someone else who's talking about it, or just find some other information related to it. It's a really, really powerful tool that one can use. Now, coming back to your business, Game2change. So take us through the typical, your typical customer that you would deal with. what would be the problem statement that they would be facing, or the business opportunity that they would be facing, and how does your business work with I'm assuming these large corporates to help them to improve their performance, especially from a human capital perspective?
Yeah, so I think really what we do is we want to unlock people's potential. And how do we want to do that? We want to give them the skills, the motivation around what they have to do on their day-to-day jobs, and we use different mediums for that. So we use digital, we use games, we use online games. We actually now also pioneering some virtual reality, and through taking we have customized content that we design for the organization, whether it's a process, an induction program, because actually, everyone sort of has a foundational knowledge when they're coming in, but it's about the context of how they apply a skill. So we take that context and we put it into a learning format that is engaging not just with your head, but also with your heart. So it's got an emotional feeling to it. So because people are just they're overloaded with so much information. So we design these experiences, and through these experiences, we both remind people what they already know. We give them context of how to apply their skills better and make better decisions. And then we also motivate them. I think through having a great experience, you feel more motivated to want to bring that and show up in your workplace. So that is sort of our core value proposition.
Okay. And is this geared more at the harder type of training subjects, or would you cover some sort of soft skills as well? Is it possible to do it with soft skills?
Definitely. So we're not how can I say, we're not subject matter experts, but we work with certain content in the organization, or we bring in an expert in that area. And what we do is we contextualize it to how do you apply it in that environment. So an interesting example, which will probably bring it home, is let's say you are I'm going to say a compliance officer, and you have to make decisions around risk within your organization. So everyone knows what the steps are. Most compliance officers have a legal background, so they've got all that. But what we will build is a scenario. And in that scenario, you'll get to apply what you know, and you'll get feedback of your decisions. And through that feedback, you become better attuned to making decisions and to applying your knowledge. So that's really how we do it. Sometimes clients come to us and say to us, we want to cover this area. Someone came to us and said, look, we want to make our salespeople aware of protection of personal information, and we want to do it in a way that ties in with how they engage in the CRM system. So what we do is we partnered up with a lawyer specialist in that. We also looked at their systems, and we created a learning process for their salespeople to go through. And we do that in very engaging ways with visuals, with scenarios, and where appropriate, we bring in games.
Amazing. And how do you see this moving into the virtual reality space? Would it be sort of gaming in a VR environment?
So it's really interesting, and it's still still starting to get in there. But I mean, for me, it's what we're realizing is that people want to be immersed. When you're immersed in something, you are you're much more receptive to taking that information in. And I think this is where the virtual reality world is powerful. And I think what we've seen and what we're doing is we're taking scenarios. So let's say I'm a customer service person, and I have to deal with clients. I could just have a set of training that I read through or click through to say, here's some scenarios and this is what I do. What we're doing is we're saying, okay, let's write up those typical scenarios, and then let's do it in a 360 environment. You put it on your goggles and you actually meet a customer, and you get a scenario in front of you, and then you have to select how you're going to respond, and you get feedback on that. And I think this is where it becomes less of a novelty and more substance, is because you immersed in that environment, it really sinks in. And by the time that you go into your work environment, whether that's retail, whether that's in a call center, it's so much more impactful, and it's going to stick with you so much more. So that's how we're seeing it, is it's great for sort of scenarios around that. I know it's also been used for health and safety, and anything that is, requires sort of that physical presence to understand it. In our work, it's more around writing scenarios and creating the environment to experience those scenarios.
Yeah. And how far do you think we are away from that? Oh, let's change the question. How far do you think you guys are away from being able to offer that?
So we're gonna be piloting beginning of 2023. We have got a tool, and we have also put together a deal around the technology and the hardware side. So what we found is it's very prohibitive if everyone has to get a pair of goggles and all of the other things. So we've actually found a partner who can offer us this technology and rent it out to clients if they want to go through this experience. It's not going to be sort of a capital expenditure on their side. It's just a rental amount, and the experience that their people are going to have is going to be so much more impactful at the end of the day. So we're looking at the first quarter of 2023.
Okay, wow, sure, that's around the corner.
It's
pretty scary to think that that's around the corner.
It is. And we're taking small steps around it. We're gonna pilot it, but we realized that a lot of the later stuff is very expensive, and when you do it bespoke, it can cost millions. But we found a way to offer it in a way that's affordable, and you don't have to be sort of the top 5 with massive budgets to do it. And we're also seeing with our gaming now is because technology is moving so fast, that the ability to develop this is also increasing. So we're able to do a lot more with not as big budgets. So that's the exciting thing with technology and the pace of progress.
Yeah, and cloud computing and all of those sort of things.
Exactly.
Anything on. You don't need server environment. I mean, if you remember back in the old 15 years ago days, we had to have access to a physical server and rock up there, like you said, with our CDs and put them in and load it on. And I mean, now it's all subscription based, so it makes things so much easier.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. I do think that the whole as pressured as it is with all the way technology is moving, it's also giving us a lot more opportunities in how we leverage it in education and training.
Absolutely. And I think that if we look at the principles of digital, the dematerialization aspect specifically,
yes,
all of us need to look at our businesses, and we need to think about how do we create a value proposition in this digital world.
Yes.
And if we don't, then time is running out. I see it in my business as well. It is not a digital element of a corporate or a business strategy. It is a business strategy that is digitally based. It's the core.
Definitely.
And it's around how do you, and in a lot of cases, I mean, I find in my business, it's really around upskilling, cross-skilling the people so that they can offer solutions that are more digitally focused. It is not getting rid of everyone and starting a business afresh. I think that it's just about getting everyone onto the same page so that we can understand that to add value to a client, we need to help our clients through the digital journey.
Definitely. And I think it's, there's two sides to it. In my business, I see the digital element with software, with automation, making certain processes easier. So, I mean, we're a fully remote team, and that's allowed us, digital and technology and software has allowed us to do that. And then we've also been able to automate certain things that I mean, I'm going to give a really simple example, like with my bookkeeping. I remember in the days when I had to sit down, count all the slips and put it in Excel, send it to my bookkeeper. I mean, now you scan in your slips, your accounting package pulls it all together. There's a bit of sort of recognition, I guess, machine learning on that end, and it just becomes that's a lot easier. So it's how do you, and then also around how you engage with your clients. So we do a lot of platforms, project management platforms like Monday, where we keep our clients up to date.
Yeah.
So streamlining the process. And then obviously for us, digital is also a way of bringing that learning in a different format and in a different experience.
Yeah. And tell me this conversation, the skills development, the hearts and the mind conversation. And in most cases, which role in the organization would you be talking to when it comes to this? Is it still very much in the L&D space, learning and development space, or has it moved sort of to a more, I don't want to say that L&D is not strategic, but is it more CEO, CFO conversation now?
Well, I think the reality has sunken in that your people are your most valuable assets, and your people are actually what's going to drive your business forward in terms of competition, being competitive, the creativity of your people, their thinking skills. So it's definitely that portfolio has extended into both the operational, but it is at the C-suite level. That is your leverage, and your people are, and how you develop them, how you retrain them is so critical. And we see this with the employee value proposition. I mean, who would have thought 10 years ago that you would actually give your employees this journey of making sure that they are happy in their workplace, that they're productive, that you're dealing with their mental health issues. So, I mean, we can see how that has switched, and keeping talent. I mean, that's the big thing. So, yeah, I think it's actually touched on everyone, and everyone has a role to play.
Yeah, I'm just looking at your website and I'm looking at your list of clients, and I'm so impressed, Deirdre. Wow, well done.
Thank you.
There are some really awesome names there.
Thank you.
And if people that don't have their own businesses, guys, it is really challenging just to get through the procurement door to be able to have a logo on your website. So, Deirdre Jensen, I salute you, and I am so impressed that the universe and someone said this to me a few days ago. They said to me, the universe looks after those that look after themselves. So you've been looking after yourself very, very well, and I'm so impressed.
Thank you. I think I've also been lucky. I've had some great clients and sponsors in my clients who really trusted me and given me the platform to do the work I needed to do. So, it's those people, and I also want to, say it out to, those people working in corporates, which is also, challenging. They've got the systems, and then they've got to bringing in new ways of doing things. Sometimes it's risky. So, a shout out to all those great sponsors of my clients who've allowed me to grow the business like this.
Yeah, but that is also testament to your personal brand. And it's testament to the reliability that your brand has and your ability to deliver that your brand has. And we talked about this a few podcasts ago. The importance of carrying yourself with pride in every aspect of your professional career and in life, I think. But let's just focus on professional career, because it's that experience that you have with someone that gives you the ability to phone them at some point and for them to actually take that call.
Definitely. And I think that's the whole thing is your reputation is so crucial. I didn't even realize it when I was younger, but I see it now. And I mean, the networks, the people you can tap into, that has been such an asset. I didn't realize what an asset it is. And even just people who can give you advice and can share experiences. So it is about, I think, walking a path with integrity, and doing, sometimes it's really hard in business, you're under pressure, but doing the right thing. Yeah. So Yeah, I mean, that is just a piece of advice to those people starting their careers that really starts to pay dividends down the line.
Yeah, and when those people, and if those people do get into their own businesses, what I've learned is that you find people that you can trust, and you take care of those people, and you
Definitely,
take care of them, and you hold on to them, and you make life good for them, because they make life good for you.
definitely.
And that's really key. But Deirdre, this is always the point where I say I cannot believe that we're out of time. Everyone listening to the show must be like, sure, this guy is so predictable, but we are out of time. Deirdre, I'm so impressed, and I'm so happy for you that life, you hit a bit of the low, but being the champion that you are, you rose to the occasion. You've rebuilt yourself. You sound so happy. You sound so energized. I feel so energized after speaking to you.
Thank
Uh,
you, Sean. Thank you.
and it has really been a privilege to have you on the show. And thank you for your openness again, for coming out here, putting your opening yourself up to the world and sharing your story with us.
An absolute pleasure, and hopefully it could add some value, add some nuggets of wisdom in there. And hopefully it can, if there's anything for anyone starting a business, hopefully some of my advice can spare them some of some of my mistakes and pain I had to feel in the beginning.
No way. They have to go through that. We've all gone through it. I was going to make a joke about it earlier and say to you, there's that lovely thing called cash flow.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Gosh.
that thing that I think about non-stop, that lovely little phrase.
Yeah,
And
no, that Mr. Cashflow it becomes a really big part of your life.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But Deirdre, once again, thank you so much. And yeah, I wish you all the very best for the rest of your year and for the rest of your business, and may you take your business to all the great heights that you achieve.
Sean, thank you so much, and such a easy, great conversation. And the same to you. I know you've really come places and done things, and thanks for sharing this wisdom with guests and putting it out there.
Thank you, Deirdre. Guys, we've come to the end of the show. So as always, you know what it's going to be. If you do one thing only, and that is stay inspired. Cheers, guys.